Chapter 10 The Role of Government by Stephen Davies.
Perhaps the biggest question in politics is that of what and how much government should do. It is this that mostly provides the dividing line between left and right. There are many answers given. At one extreme are those who argue that there is nothing that government need or should do, that in fact we would be better off without it in a stateless society. This is the anarchist position, held by a small but determined group over the last 200 years. However, it is very much a minority one. Most people think that government is an inevitable and necessary institution for one reason or another. Interestingly, while some people argue for no government, nobody has explicitly argued for government to be responsible for everything, for all aspects of life. The closest we have ever come to this were totalitarian states of the communist or fascist variety. North Korea is the closest still in existence. Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge is the place where it actually happened. Most people, however, accept that there should be limits on what government does, that it should not do everything. The argument then is over how widely and where the bounds of government action should be drawn.
Personal choice or political choice?
Another way of putting this makes it clearer what is at issue here. Broadly, there are two ways of deciding what people can do and how they can dispose of resources. One is to leave it to the decisions made by the individuals. This may be individual decisions by particular persons. Alternatively, it may mean decisions arrived at collectively by groups that people belong to on a voluntary basis, such as clubs, trade unions, corporations, or even informal groups such as people deciding to go out for dinner together, for example. The other way is for rules to be made to bind individuals and resources to be allocated by a collective process which does not come from immediate consent. This is the political process. You may say that surely there is consent exercised through the vote. However, a moment's thought will show this is not so. Laws made through the political process bind everyone, including those who do not vote, and even those who cannot, such as juveniles and residents from abroad. A simple example will show the difference between political choice of this kind and the personal choice described first. Suppose a group of people go out to dinner together. In the first case, each person will choose their own meal from a menu individually. Even if the meal is decided collectively, each person is free to not take part and go elsewhere. It is ultimately a personal, individual choice. Suppose, though, the content of the meal was decided collectively by a vote, with the minority bound by the decision and unable to opt out or go elsewhere, at least not without severe penalty. This would be like political collective choice exercised through government.
The key debate.
So the question is this: how many areas of life and how much allocation of resources should be decided through the political process and how much by personal choice? In education, for example, most of the choices are made through the political process rather than by individual choice. In groceries, say, the opposite is true. Most choices are ultimately made by individual consumers, and firms like Tesco and Walmart ultimately respond to them. This is not the same thing as asking how big government should be. This is how much of the total output of society it should dispose of. A government may only concern itself with a limited range of activities and areas of life. However, if those areas involve employing lots of people or spending large sums of money, then you will have a large government even though it only does a few things. Conversely, you might have a government that controls and decides many aspects of life but does not spend that much money. This is the case in contemporary Singapore, for example. In Britain, we now have a government that both spends a great deal and is concerned with many aspects of life.
Beyond left and right.
This argument is also not always a simple one between people who want limited government and those who want large, extensive government. Much of the argument is between people who want government to be responsible for some things but cannot agree what they should be. There are some who think that political decisions should rule much of economic life, but think things such as sexual choice and lifestyle should be a matter for individuals. Others take the exact opposite view and would have economic life ruled by individual choice, while government and laws should regulate much social and cultural activity. Some, though, are consistent collectivists and believe in most of life being subject to collective political control. Others are individualists and would maximize personal individual decision-making. In the past, government has been responsible for many things that are now a matter of personal choice. The most obvious area is that of religious belief and observance. This was once the central concern of government, but is now entirely private and voluntary. Another is clothing and consumption. At one time, government regulated this through laws. These laid down how much could be spent on things like weddings and stipulated details of the clothes people could wear, depending on their social status. They even went so far to say what kinds of hats or shoes people could wear. However, we should not laugh or feel self-satisfied. Government is now responsible for many things that were once a matter of private choice and voluntary collective action. Education is one, another is healthcare, yet another is provision for old age. There are serious suggestions that government should have a view about the kind of food people eat, their lifestyle choices, and even whether they should be allowed to become parents. During and just after World War II, many argued that government should control restaurants and diet through rationing.
Deciding the role of government.
So is there a principle or set of rules by which we can decide what areas of life government should be concerned with? Or must we just rely upon fashion and the outcome of particular political struggles? The consistent individualist position is that things should generally be decided by personal choice and voluntary cooperation. A case should be made for any departure from this. The burden of proof should be on those arguing for collective political decision-making and a role for government in any area of life. 5 main reasons are given for making individual choice the default position. Number 1. Individuals are in general the best judges of their own interests. They know what it is that they value most. They know their own circumstances best. Most women agree that their husband knows them better than anyone else, but would never dream of letting him buy their clothes. Why let a complete stranger or collection of strangers decide what kind of education your children should have? Number 2. Personal development and flourishing can only happen if people are free to choose and to learn from the choices they make. To the extent that they are not, they remain like children and do not develop. Number 3. Social progress and development is best served by allowing individuals to choose as much as possible for themselves. It is the experiments that eccentric individuals make that are the source of innovation and discovery. Collective political decision-making inevitably means giving particular people power to decide what others should do. This is both dangerous and morally corrupting for everyone, particularly the people with power. As Lord Acton said, all power tends to corrupt. Finally, all of the evidence is that collective decision-making is simply less effective and efficient than relying on individual choice. Not only are personal desires less likely to be met, but there is a huge waste of resources. The counter-argument essentially has 2 elements. The first is that we are in a real sense childlike. We do not know what is best for us and left to ourselves will make the wrong decisions. Apparently though, some people are not childlike and know what is good for the rest of us. The second is that we are collective social beings and individual identity and personal choice are ultimately an illusion. Since we all really want the same things, we should collectively decide what it is we want to have. Government is the instrument by which these collective choices are realized. There are a very few cases where this kind of argument is true and where allowing personal choice is unrealistic. Collective national defense is probably one. Another may be the provision of law. Public sanitation, perhaps another. These, however, should be seen as exceptional. Individual choice should guide most aspects of life, and this affair of politics and government should be strictly limited.